So welcome again. Following from our previous lesson, in this lesson we're going to talk about segues in more details. We're going to learn how to make segues between different view controllers and also how to call them programmatically. We will also learn something that's called an unwind segue. So let's get started with that. I'm going to go into Xcode. I'm going to close this old project, start a new one, say that one is called Single View Application Segues app. And in my Segues app, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build two view controllers. So I'm actually going to build three of them. And I know we've done this before, but I'm actually going to go do everything once again so we kind of remember the whole process. So I'm going to go in here. You don't have to do it this way. If you feel comfortable already, you can do it the way that we did in the previous lesson. But if you want to follow me along and get a sense of how things are happening, I'm going to go in here and say, give me all these three files and delete all of them. So I'm going to move all of them to trash. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild all of them. So first of all, I'm going to make a new Cocoa Touch class. And it's going to be a UI view controller. I'm going to call it main view controller. And that's been added there. And then I'm going to add, and it didn't add it to my project because I was in a wrong place. I'm just going to drag them in here and everything is going to work. Then I'm going to add another one, Command N. I'm going to call this one second view controller. Again, it's a subclass of UI view controller and it is an Objective-C. We know all of these things, and I am not making an XIB file for it. Let me show you that in the third one. So file, new file, or Command N, and then when we get in here, Cocoa Touch class, and it does not have an XIB file. And this is going to be my third view controller. I know this is a bit of a long way around, but I find it that this deconstructing iPhone apps always helps the students better understand what's going on. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to all the .h files, and all the .h files, I'm going to remove everything I know I'm not going to need. So it's basically importing the UI kit and having an interface. So again, my .h for the other file, which I don't even know what's its name, UI kit and the interface. And the third view controller, the same thing, not the pound sign, and remove that. And I'm going to go to the .m files and I'm going to remove almost absolutely everything. So I don't need any of these guys, not even the view.load. The view.load is there for us so we can use it, but it doesn't have to be there. So I'm going to remove everything here as well in all the .m files. So essentially it becomes an interface, second view controller, and implementation, second view controller. Soon enough, we will learn more about the classes and how do we do these things and what do they mean. But for now, you can imagine that the interface is a declaration and the implementation is the definition of that class. Let's go to third view controller, do the same exercise, and I'm going to remove everyone. So clean and everything is the way we want it. Now, remember, we used to have a file called main.storyboard, and I removed that one. So I'm going to have to add a new storyboard as well. So I'm going to hit Command N, and I'm going to go in here, say storyboard. That's what I want to add now. In here, I'm going to say this file is called, you could call it again main, or you could call it, say, my visuals, or just my, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it, actually main is a very good name for it. That's why it's called main.storyboard. But since we're trying to rebuild everything, I'm actually going to call this one home.storyboard. So now we have a file called home.storyboard and there is nothing in it. Now, if you remember, I could actually go ahead and add view controllers. I could go here to library, say one view controller. I'm going to put it here. That's going to be for my main view controller, and another view controller. This one, I'm going to put it for my second view controller, and then another one that's going to be my third view controller. So I'm essentially rebuilding the whole thing. I'm rebuilding the storyboards, I'm rebuilding the view controllers, almost entirely everything. This first view controller, I'm going to go up here to the identity inspector, and I'm going to call this one to be my home, or sorry, it's called main view controller. And then I'm going to select the second one, and that's going to be the second view controller. And the third one obviously is going to be the third view controller. And since I'm going to do some navigation between them, I'm going to have to change some of the colors so we can know that, you know, we have navigated somewhere. So I'm going to make the background of this one pink, the background of the last one, let's say green. Perfect. Now, the next thing I need is this. One of these view controllers needs to be my initial view controller. So I'm going to select this one and say is initial view controller, and that little arrow shows up in here. Now, here is a very interesting thing that happened here. If you have been really perceptive, you have to be asking yourself this question. Since I can make multiple storyboards, how would the app know which storyboard should find the app launcher from? Or which storyboard will hold on to the initial view controller? And that's no magic, that's somewhere up here in our app settings. So you go up here and you select your app, and you will end up in the settings page of it, and my screen, okay, and you select your app and you see the settings of it. And in here we will talk about some of these as we go through the lessons, but one of the things that we need to know right away is this one. In the deployment info, in general settings, there is something called the main interface. He's saying which storyboard is going to be the main interface for this application. And since I don't have main anymore, I'm going to open this and I'm going to say home storyboard, the one that we made ourselves, this one. So that's how you choose which storyboard to be the main storyboard for your application. And of course, we can navigate from one storyboard to another one, and that's something that we'll see in a few sections when we talk about the UI navigation controllers. So now in my storyboard, I have 3 view controllers, and one of them, the white one, is going to launch by default. But what I do want is I want to go from one of them to the other one, and then from that one to the third one, and then going back to both one step back from green to pink and pink to white. And I also want to see a way for going all the way from green back to the white one. So let's see what we're going to do. I'm going to add some buttons. These are going to be very simple stuff. So button, and this button says, let's say it's got a pinkish background, and it says go to second, and that's the pink view. And I thought I gave it a background color, apparently not. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this now. My mouse always gives me some difficulty. It's happening multiple times. I should get a new one, I guess. So here I'm adding the new one, and this one, it says go to third, and of course third is the green one, and I'm going to change the background of that to be green. And then I'm going to have another button in here, and this one says go to, why is my mouse doing this? Go to home, and the home is obviously the white one, and let's call this one go back home. Okay, and this is the one that its background gets to be the white color. Once again, for some reason my mouse is playing a trick on me, but you know, it's gonna come, and that's going to be the white color. Perfect. And I'm going to copy both of these, all of these 2 buttons. I'm going to take them to my last view controller, the third view controller. And in here, I'm going to have 2 different buttons. One of them is going to be saying, go back to pink. So this one, the top one, is going to be, let me write it there, go back to second, which we know it is the pink one. Pink, no, not punk, pink. All right, and of course it's got a pinkish background color, and I thought I gave it pink. So the top one is going to be pink, that says go back to second, and this one says go back all the way to the home view. Go back all the way home. Perfect. So here's what I'm gonna do. Now, I know the last time we did this, you were actually dragging with control from a button directly to this view controllers. This time we're gonna do things a little bit differently, and this is how we're going to do that. First of all, I'm gonna make my segues between view controllers. So I'm gonna select from one view controller outlet to the other one, and I'm gonna say this is one segue, and then I'm gonna make another one from here to there. That's another segue. So the segues that we make forward, going deeper into the view controllers, we're going to make it from one view controller to another one, and then from the second view controller to the last one. And then we need to know what are the names of those view controllers. This one, I'm sorry, those segues. This one, I'm gonna call it to pink segue, and I usually like to end it with an ID because that's an identifier for the segue. So I'm going to call it to pink segue ID, and this one I'm going to call to green segue ID. You can imagine a real life situation, you would call this one, I don't know, to contact segue ID or to a story segue ID, depending on what that view controller is going to show you. Then the next thing is we have to make the actions for our buttons. So I'm going to go to my assistant window, and I'm going to first go to the main view controller, and here I'm going to see main view controller.h, and the function I want to make is go to second. So here, go to second action. That's the first function. Then I'm going to go to the pink one, and in the pink one, of course, I'm going to load the second view controller.h, and here I'm going to make a function or an action called go to third action. Perfect. So we have these two taken care of. Now I also have another button in here in the second view controller, or what is pink. So I'm going to make another one in here, and this one I'm going to call it an action saying go back home action. So that's the action that's going to take us back home. And then in the third one, which is the green view controller, I'm going to load the third view controller.h, and in here I'm going to say this one is an action called go back to second action. So everything is named and ordered, and they have functions properly. Remember, this one I still don't have anything for it, the one that takes us back all the way to the other side. So let's first program these guys. I'm going to go into my main view controller.m, and here when we have to go to the second, I'm going to call a very simple function, and that is being self perform segue with identifier. So it's saying perform a segue. So what segue would I want to perform? This one, the one whose identifier is to pink segue ID. So I'm going to go to main view controller.m. I'm going to say the ID for it, the identification for it is to pink segue ID. And I don't have a sender. I don't want to send any particular information. So that's going to take us to the other one. Now let's repeat the same thing for when we go from the pink one to the green one. If you remember, the segue is called to green segue ID, and we already have the function in there. So in the second view controller, when it says go to third action, I'm going to say self perform segue with identifier, and that's the identifier, and my sender is nil. All right. Now in my second view controller.m, I also have the go back, which we already saw. Self dismiss view controller, yes, animated, and don't do anything at completion. So that's how we can go back. And I'm gonna have the exact same piece of code for third view controller.m when we want to go back. So that's about that. Once again, really quickly, from main view controller, self perform segue with the identifier that takes us to second. That identifier is set in our segue in here, and then on other segue we have another identifier, and every time we want to go back we simply call the self dismiss view controller. Keep in mind, dismissing a view controller, it means in the stack of the view controllers that you have gone deeper and deeper as they were nested, just go back one stage. It doesn't mean go back all the way to that one or to any particular view controller. It simply means go back one step behind. So let's run this application. Once it launches, I should be able to go from here, from the pink one to the green one, from the white one to the pink one, and from the pink one to the green one, and then I can go back to the pink and I can go back to the white. Exactly the way we were hoping everything is gonna work. Now, the only button that doesn't work is this one, going back all the way home. And let me show you how we do that. This is the last bit of this lesson. It's actually quite easy. I'm gonna go to my white view controller, what is called the main view controller. I'm gonna add a new action manually, and this one I'm gonna call it go back to home. All right, and what go back to home does, it doesn't matter. What does matter is what kind of argument it has, and it has a UI storyboard segue, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. Now I'm going to take this method, I'm going to go to my .m, and I'm going to add that as well. And again, my method doesn't really do anything. You could do things in it. For instance, when you're unwinding and you're going back from multiple nested view controllers, you could actually do things, you could send data or whatnot. But for now, the only thing that really matters for it is that it is there, it exists in here. Now, this part is going to become a little bit confusing. So far, everything we have done, we have relied on a relationship between a view controller, visual outlet in our storyboard, as well as a view controller class. So main view controller.h&m were connected to this guy. The second view controller.h&m, they were connected to this guy, and the same thing for the last one. This time, however, we are going to call a method in here in our third view controller, but we are going to call it from main view controller. So they have to be interconnected. Now, the moment you have something in here in any of your view controllers that has a UI storyboard segue into it as an argument, it means you can call them here in the exit. So in the exit, I could actually go ahead and say, well, go back home. This is the function we have received as a presenting segue from another view controller. Look in here. If I actually go ahead and I comment this out and I comment those out, and then the moment I go back to my storyboard, now these exit outlets, they have nothing on them. So no matter how much you try to control drag over them, they won't show anything to you simply because they don't have anything. But the moment you have a rollback in any of your view controllers, they will appear in that outlet. So in here, in the storyboard now, I can go ahead and say this one, I want it to be on this guy as an action for it. So now they're connected to each other. Let's see how they work. If all goes well, we should be able to go from, obviously, go dive into the green one and then press this one to go back all the way to the white one to get rid of the entire stack and go back. And that's what we call an unwind segue. So that's about that. We now saw how we could drill down inside multiple layers of view controllers using segues that they do have identifiers. And with that, we can actually make a lot of different kinds of applications. The one thing we haven't done, and that's the thing I'm going to leave for the next lesson, that is sending a message through segues to the next view controller. So imagine when I press on this one, and I go to the pink, I want to see something here. So with that in mind, let's move on to our next lesson.